gents. Very warm welcome. Can you guys hear me okay in the back with that microphone? Yeah. Well, shout if you can't. I know you will shout if you can't anyway. So a very warm welcome to our UKIP meeting here in Northway. Thank you very much to the Northway Pub for hosting us this evening. Thank you. Important health and safety information first. Fire exits to the back of the room. There's one also to the side. And clearly marked fire exits, and you can follow me out of the room if there is a fire, because I'll be first out. Right, so joining me on the stage tonight, we have Caroline Stevens, and Caroline is our parliamentary candidate for Stroud. I've spoken with Caroline on a number of occasions in the past, and it's always a pleasure to do so. Also joining us this evening, Steve Cooper, who's the chair of Northway Parish Council. Steve is also a Borough Council candidate for Northway in the next year's Borough Council elections. Someone else to introduce to you is our mascot. Unfortunately, he remains nameless. The plan was to name him at the Northway Village Fete, but that didn't go quite to plan, did it? We all know why. More on that later. So there he sits. They've invited us back to the Christmas version of the Northway Fete, when we will be attempting to name him, unless we're banned again. So, I guess. So, I think it's it. I think without. I have a real issue with bullies. I have to tell you this. Real issue. I can't stand people who use their money, power, weight, influence, anything to get what they want, because they're not intelligent enough to get it through rational conversation. So I dedicate tonight to anyone that's been the victim of a bully, in the hope that the bullies get what's coming to them. Now, we all know why we're here. We're here because the Conservative Party in Tewkesbury are so afraid of what we have to say that they took the extreme step of banning us from the Northway Fete. Unbelievable. I wonder, how well do you know your councillors? Can anyone in the audience perhaps suggest the names of the councillors who spearheaded the campaign against us? Any suggestions? Sir?
Well, as an ex-town councillor, we've been intimidated perhaps many times. I would hazard a guess. I'll council Councillor Vernon Smith, and it has to be a Northway councillor, so I would guess Elaine Tillman. That would be my guess.
How well do you know your councillors? Because guess what, they're the names we've got as well. And I don't know if we've got any Conservative spies in the audience, but we were a bit nervous about coming out and saying those names initially, but we've now got written statements from the organising committee at Northway Fete. So take me to court, I haven't got a problem with that. Let's find out. Let's find out what they were so nervous about, shall we? In 8 months' time, you're going to be stood in a voting booth. You can have your pen in your hand, poised over the ballot paper, wondering where you're going to put your X. But you know it's not such a difficult choice, because you've only really got two options. You can vote to allow an unelected bureaucracy in Brussels to run this country, accountable to nobody but themselves, and certainly never accountable to you. You can vote to continue to allow uncontrolled mass immigration into this country, regardless of the resources that we have. And you can vote to allow to land developers to continue to build what they want, where they want, when they want, and how they want, regardless of whatever you say. Or you can vote UKIP. You can vote for democracy. And it really is as black and white a choice as that. It really is. Because when you scratch the surface of the Liberal Party, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, what you find underneath is exactly the same. The same type of people doing the same type of things, looking after owning themselves. The Labour Party in Tewkesbury have never traditionally been a strong force. They should never be discounted though. They've recently appointed a new parliamentary candidate, and I've been chatting to him on Facebook, and he seems a very amicable man, I have to say. But let's never forget what they did for us. Let's never forget their legacy of opening this country to mass uncontrolled immigration, and an attempt to change the demographics of an entire country to suit their own voter profile. And let's never forget that when times were good, they frittered away our money. They wasted our money. They never paid national debt. So when that rainy day came, as it always was going to, we had austerity, and are we ever suffering now because of it? I think in Tewkesbury, in the last general election, there was an appetite for change. And I think that's why the Liberal Democrats did so well. Didn't they ever let you down? What did they do when they got into power? They brought us university tuition fees. They brought us the hated bedroom tax. And I'm convinced that that bedroom tax is going to become Clegg's poll tax. You'll never be forgiven for it. And right here in Tewkesbury, you've never forgiven them. Because in every local election, since that general election, the Liberal Democrat vote has quite rightly collapsed. And you should never forgive them for what they've done. Now that just leaves the Conservative Party. And make no mistake, the Conservative Party have an absolute iron grip over Tewkesbury. And I don't just mean at Westminster level, I mean at Borough Council level, which is arguably the most important place. A more important place than Westminster is what goes on in that Borough Council. We've experienced the Conservative Party's democracy, haven't we? Steve already mentioned Oldbury Road car park. I was there, and I know looking around the audience, some of you were as well, when we went to Tewkesbury Borough Council and said, look, we don't oppose this sale, all we want is a pause. We want some more time for consultation. And what did they do? They ignored us. Not only ignoring us, they had the audacity to criticise us for being there. Every single Conservative councillor that was in that room voted to ignore the people that were there. Every single one was whipped and told what to say because they're sheep. They do what they're told to do. There was only one person, I have to say, one Conservative councillor that didn't vote to ignore the people of Tewkesbury on that day, and that was Councillor Vernon Smith, because he wasn't there. I experienced them recently in the village of Wood Stanway, working with a small group of people out there against the village hotel. And 98% of the people of that small hamlet said, no, we don't want this hotel to be built in our hamlet. 98%. Everyone was ignored. Everyone was ignored. And the planning permission went through. Law Homes will build that hotel. And I just find that wrong. It's fundamentally, absolutely wrong. We must restore democracy, and we must start just listening to you people. What are we for if we're not here to listen and to represent our people? Now, it's no doubt that when somebody like UKIP comes along, or when an individual comes along and starts rocking the boat and causing some difficulties for the nice, comfortable, cosy political world, there are some rumours, and there are rumours of rumours, and there are some damn lies told about you. So just explore one or two of those now. UKIP is not an anti-immigration party. I'm not anti-immigration. If you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're an IT worker, if you're somebody that can bring a positive contribution to this nation, you'll always be welcome here. What we stand opposed to is uncontrolled mass immigration, the sort of immigration that changes the very fabric of our society, makes our communities become unrecognisable. Right now in Europe, there are 54 million people who are unemployed. There's absolutely nothing stopping any of those people coming to this country. Should they decide to come here, we're duty-bound, morally bound, ethically bound, legally bound, to feed them, house them, clothe them, educate their children, make them well if they become ill. We simply don't have the resources to look after all of Europe. But that's the risk we're exposed to. This isn't a numbers game, though. This isn't 1,000 people, 2,000 people, 1 million people, 10 million people. This is the principle of the fact that we as a country can no longer control our own borders. Our sovereign right to control the basics of any country has been given away. And I find that fundamentally wrong. We must take back control of our borders. UKIP is not opposed to foreign aid. I'm not opposed to foreign aid. Our place as the 6th largest economy in the world, our duty to help those who are less able to help themselves. But what I stand opposed to is foreign aid that exists to meet a manifesto promise, a financial target of 0.7% of GDP. Because what that brings us is foreign aid, and let's remember what foreign aid is. It's our tax money, or it's money that we've borrowed, being given to the likes of China, being given to the likes of India. India, a country, incidentally, with a space program, a country which recently announced it's going to build the world's tallest statue. Now, does that sound like a country that needs our tax money, or does that sound like a country that maybe should look at its own priorities first? Look, I think Steve said this earlier on. We're not trained politicians, we're not trained public speakers, we really are just normal people. We've got kids to feed, mortgages to pay, jobs to go to. Yeah, I worry about the gas and electric bill coming in. I'm no different from anybody else. So forgive us our sins when things go wrong. Occasionally we get somebody from UKIP piping up and saying something that doesn't represent our views, our UKIP. If you take all of those people that have said some of these things and put them in a pot, and if you then take every other member, paid-up member of UKIP, I'm talking about paid-up members, I'm not talking about voters, I'm not talking about supporters, but paid-up members of UKIP, I'd have 99.95% of UKIP members in this pot. These people don't represent our views, yet we appear to be tarred with the same brush. And I think that's a UKIP phenomenon. For example, who in the room seriously thinks that every Labour Party supporter thinks that white people enjoy playing divide and rule over black people? It's a ridiculous, it's a deeply offensive statement to make. But a Labour MP, an MP nonetheless, Diane Abbott said that in 2012. So does that make it true? Does anyone in the room seriously think that every Conservative Party supporter thinks that women who wear burqas look like bin bags? Of course not. But Conservative councillor Chris Jordanis said that. If that was a UKIP councillor, oh, we'd all be believing that. It's simply not true. That only seems to apply to UKIP. Now, they say that we politicians should go around and pat small dogs and kiss babies, don't they? Or is it the way round? I always get those two mixed up. But just to make sure and to be ever resourceful, I brought my own baby tonight. Sat down over there. And this is actually her second UKIP meeting, would you believe? She's now 3 weeks old, 5 days. 3 weeks, 5 days, right, there you go. And it's #1 granddaughter. And I should know 3 weeks, 5 days, shouldn't I? My daughter's disabled, and she was always going to have a difficult labour. We knew that. So my wife, her partner, and I spent 36 hours in Gloucester Hospital while she was giving birth. And as you can see, they're all absolutely fine. But what it did is it gave me the opportunity to see the NHS right in the middle of it, right on the front line, for 36 hours, and it was remarkable. It was remarkable. I'd like to just share a couple of those things I saw with you. It was a Wednesday, and I was sat in a waiting room on my own. But there was a nurse outside. She'd got a mobile, I'm assuming talking to her partner. And I heard her say, I'm working a 14-hour shift tomorrow, and then I'm back in again on Friday. And I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that a nurse would work a 14-hour shift and then be back in the next day. And speaking to colleagues, that's not unusual. It's not unusual for nurses to work 14-hour shifts back to back. And I find that astonishing. Let me put this in perspective. I'm a project manager. I move logistics operations around the country. Again, I might work a 14-hour shift. The worst thing that might happen if I work a 14-hour shift is I might make a spelling mistake on an email. No one's going to die. No one's going to be injured. But hey, you've got somebody providing primary care, giving drugs to people, working these ridiculously long shifts. And I just find that completely unacceptable. Because of my daughter's condition, she can't have pethidine, which, as you probably know, is one of the most common drugs that pregnant women are given. And there was an occasion when a midwife came up to my daughter and said, right, you're obviously in a lot of pain, we're going to give you some pethidine. Well, thank God my wife was there, who stepped in and said, no, So please don't do that. These will be the consequences of doing that. Do you know what the midwife said? She said, I'm really, really sorry. I haven't had a chance to read their notes yet. I haven't had a chance to read their notes. Now, do I blame that midwife? You know, I really don't. I really don't blame the midwife. What I blame are the managers, the accountants, the bureaucrats and the politicians that put that midwife in that position where she couldn't read the patient's notes before treating them. That's what I find unacceptable. Now, anyone who's ever been through childbirth knows that you spend a lot of time wandering around the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning waiting for something to happen. And that's where I found myself. And I looked around and I looked at the buildings and the facilities and I didn't see an NHS that was short of cash. I saw quality, which is exactly the way it should be. But I also came across this, and I appreciate you're not going to be able to see this, but I took a photograph of it. And what this tells me is, in Gloucester Hospital, in the main block, whatever the main block is, it has an energy rating of F. And that's resplendent on the wall in Gloucester Hospital, looks very nice in a nice frame. Now we all know, those of us who've ever worked with middle managers and full middle managers, the steps that will have been gone through to get this. Yeah? Lots of managers will have had lots of meetings with accountants and PowerPoint presentations, and they will have employed a firm of consultants to get this. And they will have delivered two things. They will have delivered this, and they will have delivered a big bill. Yeah. Now my issue with this is, if I'm ill, that's absolutely useless. That serves no purpose whatsoever for me if I'm not well. And that's all I want the NHS to do. Caroline, I think you mentioned earlier on about some of the crazy schemes going on in the NHS that are pulling on its resources, and this is one of them. I just want the NHS to make me better when I'm not well. So I want to take the money wasted on schemes like this, wasted on the schemes that Caroline mentioned earlier on, and let's invest that in the NHS on the most important resource that it has. It's people. It's frontline staff are the most important, valuable resource the NHS has. So let's make sure that that nurse doesn't have to work 14-hour shifts. Let's make sure that midwife has enough support so she can read a patient's notes. It doesn't, to me, sound like too much to ask for. The advantage of having lots of children is that you have lots of stories. I'll share another one with you. Number two son, he's in college. He's doing a system support qualification in Gloucester College. And my wife and I went to see his tutor earlier in the year. And the tutor said, he's doing really well. He's doing amazingly well, better than we thought he was, mostly because he's a moody teenager and doesn't actually talk to anybody. And he said, he's going to get enough of a qualification to go to university. And we thought that was great. But then in the next breath we thought, how on earth are we going to pay for that? How are we going to pay for him to go to university? And I have a big problem with that. Because I only have an individual, like hundreds of thousands of other individuals probably in the country, that's capable of achieving something that may well come back and work for a British technology company that may develop the next big thing and contribute to our economy, who probably, highly likely, isn't going to be able to do that for financial reasons. And I have an issue with that. I think that next to keeping us safe, the duty of any government is to educate our children, is to educate that next generation. And money should never come into that. The judging factor should be the ability of the child. Now, UKIP's already announced that it'll abolish university tuition fees. I'd like to see it go a step further. I'd like to campaign for free nursery school places. I'd like to campaign for a tailored education system based purely on the needs of the individual. Yes, for some that might mean comprehensive schools, for some grammar schools, for some technical colleges, for some universities. Now, to those who say, hang on, Stuart, that's ridiculous. How on earth are we going to afford to pay for that? I say this. If we can afford to pay £55 million a day to be part of a European Union country club, If we can afford £27 million a day in foreign aid, we can damn well afford to educate our children. I mentioned earlier there were 2 power bases in Tewkesbury. Westminster, Tewkesbury Borough Council, and that's really where it's at, it's in the Borough Council. This is a call for people to stand up and be counted. It's fine, Steve, myself, Caroline, all of us doing our bit, but without you, we'll achieve nothing. So the call goes out to the people in this room, as it does in every one of our public meetings, to stand up for the people of Tewkesbury and stand up for election at Tewkesbury Borough Council. Now there are some people who've already answered the call. In the room with us tonight, sat down over there at the back, Marianne, and she's gone, oh no, he's pointing at me. So Marianne's recently come to join us, and she's going to stand in Prize Park for us. There's 2 seats in Prize Park, and Marianne has agreed to stand in one of them. And again, an absolutely passionate person about Tewkesbury, about Prize Park. She is going to make an absolutely excellent borough councillor. We've already met Steve Cooper. Steve's standing in here in Northway. And I've already told you, Steve's priority, yes, it's UKIP, but you know what? The people of Northway come first, and that's exactly the way it should be. You might have seen the local media today. We've had a bit of a Douglas Carswell moment, haven't we? There comes a point when I've learned when a group of people becomes credible, they become viable, and we start to attract really good talent, people like Mario, people like Steve, people like this next guy. A man who, for 40 years, campaigned for the Conservative Party. Not just stood, not just voted, but actually campaigned. He was out there, he was leafleting, he was knocking on doors. He's a borough councillor, town councillor, ex-mayor of Tewkesbury. But he's come to join us in UKIP. And when we met him and said, okay, why after all this time are you coming to us? He said, the Conservative Party no longer represents the people of Tewkesbury. They're no longer democratic, they no longer listen to us, they're in it for themselves. I don't know if any of you have seen the posting on the Gloucestershire Record website today that announces his defection to us. But there's a comment underneath, and I brought it with me just to read out. And it comments on the article in the Echo, coming from Elaine Hancock, who said that the Conservatives in Tewkesbury have some excellent candidates to represent the Conservatives. We have some excellent candidates to represent the Conservatives. And isn't that the problem? Isn't that the problem? Because shouldn't they be representing the people and not the party? Is it any wonder that this guy has come to join us? When we sat down and when we met with him and we said, okay, great, you're coming to join us, where would you like to stand? It was an absolutely instant decision. He said, I want to stand here in Northway. So your second borough council candidate here in Northway is Mr. Graham Dawson. Now, there's another small announcement. I've not told Steve this bit yet. I think we have an opportunity in Tewkesbury. When I look at these 2 power bases, I think we have an opportunity to drive a coach and horses right through the middle of that. And I think we can bring together what goes on in Westminster and what goes on at borough council level far, far closer together for all of our benefit. I think that a Member of Parliament can do what several other Members of Parliament have done around the country and sit on a borough council. Now, to those who might think, hang on a minute, how does a Member of Parliament get enough time to sit on a borough council? Well, I think it's just about prioritisation. Because if our current MP has enough time to chair the Northern Ireland Select Committee, if he's got enough time to campaign on issues in Africa, then I think an MP has enough time to focus on something more important, which is issues here in Tewkesbury. So, as well as standing as your Member of Parliament for UKIP next year, I'll also be standing as a borough council candidate. And I'll give you the opportunity to break down those power barriers. So then the question remains, where to stand. We've already heard the name Vernon Smith tonight. Okay. Does anyone know where Vernon is a borough councillor representing?
Yes.
West Newtown.
They've always been quite good actually. They've got him under their wing now.
Does anyone know where I live? Newtown. Okay. So it would be wrong if I didn't stand as a borough councillor in Newtown and give the people the choice. If they want to elect me, great. If they don't, then it's the decision of the people. But I could at least stand and go for a vote. So I'll announce that I'll stand as a borough electoral candidate in Newtown next year. Okay.